Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group. And today I decided to revive a little theme that I thought worked really well last year, got a lot of good feedback on, and that's our study hall series. So we actually kind of had Miss Rhonda help us out with a short-term care roundup. I think that could be considered the first for 2025, but I decided to lead our hybrid long-term care study hall for this year. And what I see these study halls being is I'm going to lay out the product type. You're all obviously very familiar with hybrid long-term care, but I want to talk a little bit into the product itself, how to think about it from an agent perspective. I'll show off our handy dandy one pager from our product buddy tool to give you an idea of how we talk about it from a consumer perspective, and then we can talk about all of your favorite products and carriers and hoping this can be a collaborative session because, um, we all work with hybrid products here, but some have preferences to one carrier or one product or another, or like to sell a product one way or another. And I just think even though we all work with many of these carriers, there's lots we can learn from each other. So feel free to pipe up if you have a favorite product or you're having certain success selling hybrid long-term care in a certain way. Definitely feel free to add that to the discussion. I would love to hear your voices. But I want to start by just kind of introducing hybrid long-term care as a concept. So, what is the appeal of hybrid long-term care from the agent perspective? I definitely think it's a couple of things: innovation, competition, flexibility. Those are kind of three big buzzwords that I think about whenever I think about hybrid long-term care. Lots of carriers are continuing to throw their hat into this ring, and carriers with their hat in the ring already are not afraid to make changes to be more competitive, to be more appealing to consumers, to listen to feedback. So, I think we're starting to move a little bit from a market that is highly homogenized, really building off of that original MoneyGuard and TLC kind of plan designs and moving out into some more creative options. Where I feel like traditional long-term care, for lack of a better word, has stagnated just a little bit. I think we're seeing hybrid on really that forefront of innovation and constant updates and looking to deliver things that benefit agents, benefit consumers, and the like. So, what do I mean by innovation? What kind of innovations have we seen? I mean, cash indemnity coverage is really something that is mostly only seen in the hybrid long-term care space. So that flexibility to be able to pay unskilled caretakers, get care from your direct family members, friends, whoever it may be, um, is huge. It's not to be discounted at all. It's seen as a really, really big advantage as opposed to reimbursement. But also we're seeing things like carrier's doing really well on the international benefits side. So we'll go through kind of the carriers and what they're offering from that perspective a little later, but international benefits seem to be, again, another really important piece to the offering for hybrid long-term care carriers. But I think also we have this kind of traditional story stuck in our minds with hybrid long-term care of this is a single pay product or this is a 10 pay product. But we're starting to see products coming out or repricing being done to be really, really favorable to pay as you go options. So I don't think we're drawing that line in the sand so much anymore that when a client wants to do a pay as you go plan, that traditional or short-term care is really the only route we're taking. Hybrid long-term care can really facilitate the needs of that client pretty well, whether it's a true recurring pay, a pay to 65, a pay to 100, whatever it may be. Even being able to do things like 10 pays on a monthly basis. Um, Not to be discounted either. I think they've come a long way. And we're also seeing joint survivorship options, right? One America used to be the only game in town there, but obviously we have Nationwide Care Matters Together that is still relatively new. let me know when I can stop calling things new. Care Matters Together is, I would say, bordering on not new. Um, but all the same, we're seeing that option for the joint survivorship appearing a little bit more as we go along. And then competition, right, is like so at the heart of the hybrid long-term care market. I mean, not as if it isn't across all sectors of the market. It's not as if all sectors of the market don't compete with each other, right? But especially within hybrid carriers, we're really seeing a lot of stiff competition, whether that's in repricing and repricing downward. We saw that. Um, a year or two ago where there was a lot of competition on price. But even just stepping up one benefit or another, there's tons of competition in play in the hybrid market right now. I think where we saw some of these products reprice downward to become cheaper is kind of a signal, right? If not all things are equal between hybrid plans, but if things are very similar, you have to find new ground to compete on, right? You have to innovate on your benefits, or you have to be one of the cheaper options in town while still providing the benefits that clients know and love, right? So, I think that's really interesting that we've got quite a battlefield there. Um, and then, of course, flexibility from an agent perspective is always really nice to have, whether you're offering it as your first option or you show a client, say a traditional option or something else of that nature, to be able to offer that live, die, quit proposition that's quite easy to speak to and overcomes some natural client objections of if I don't use it, I lose it, or what have you. That flexibility is just super, super important to have in your back pocket. But we also think about flexibility from, an administrative point of view. So carriers aren't afraid to pivot, put out a new product generation, find a way to allow more clients. We had Alan Gregoire on the study group a few weeks ago, and even he was talking about new products potentially coming for Nationwide as a way to provide underwriting downhills to people who are, declined for Care Matters or Care Matters Together. I just think there's a lot more open ears and a lot more hands that are willing to make changes, and make changes based on feedback from clients and agents alike. So there's a lot to like about the hybrid long-term care space. And when I say hybrid, I mean hybrid life long-term care products with extension of benefit riders. We're not talking about pure life insurance with a long-term care rider. We're talking about extension rider products. There's a million different names for hybrid long-term care, asset-based long-term care. I've heard it called linked benefit, whatever it may be, whatever's going to signal to you the correct product type that we're talking about. But then just some notes on hybrid long-term care from an underwriting perspective. It can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Okay. Um, the great side of the coin here is that many of these carriers focus on really streamlined underwriting processes, either not doing APS or APSing just for cause, designed to kind of get you quickly through that process, generally a shorter application, generally phone interviews for younger ages, really designed to make it a quick, easy process with a lot less resistance than some other products. But I think sometimes the problem can lie exactly in that point. This is not true of all hybrid carriers, but I do think there's a general formula to think about. If the carrier is doing more homework on the underwriting side and they're doing a lot more research, they're able to access a lot more of your information, then they're able to give you a lot more of a benefit of the doubt. They're able to stretch a bit more, as some underwriters would say, on certain cases. But if they're doing less homework, they don't really have the ability as much to give that benefit of the doubt, and they have to deal more in broad and sweeping rules with regard to underwriting, and that can lead to um, folks who may have been accepted if that homework had been done. So that's something to think about. A couple of really quick, just like hybrid long-term care in the news sort of notes for you guys before we start moving into specific products. Securian now is available in California as of early on this year. Um, I don't know if many of you have had the same experience, but we've seen that their pricing is likely going to need a tweak, and I think they will do that. But this first release in California doesn't seem to be all too competitive from a pricing perspective. So we're hoping for some tweak that kind of brings them back in with the rest of the crowd because California, like some other states, especially like your New York, some New England states, sometimes we can hurt for long-term care options, especially those that the rest of the country has available to them. So hoping for some positivity there. One America released Asset Care 2024 at the tail end of last year. There's lots of new updates there that I'll dive into with you guys. But it's for a select number of states. But recently, that list has grown to include something like 7 other states, something of that nature. So we'll go over that. And then, of course, we had a new product enter the hybrid long-term care space just recently, which is John Hancock's Life Care product. A very interesting product, indexed hybrid product. Tends to dial in a little bit more toward a 4-year long-term care benefit as opposed to a 6-year long-term care benefit. But I'm really interested to hear from those of you who have dug in. I know we had Kim Lips on maybe a couple of months ago to kind of talk through that initial presentation. But if any of you boots on the ground have actually worked with the product a bit or have done some analysis or have had a particular case where Hancock's Life Care has worked well, I know there's a lot of interest. I would love to hear from you empirically about your experience with the product. Does anybody have any questions, comments on this little bit of intro, or do you have a specific product or a specific concept that you'd like to dive into together? Otherwise, I will just move right on to my next item. For my next trick, I will share this one pager from our individual product buddy tool. And this is a tool that we have released in the last few months or so. It is a product recommendation engine designed to help you understand what product type might be a good fit for a client, but the leave behind from using that tool is generally a one pager that looks just like this that introduces or refreshes the client's memory on a certain product type. So we generally try to create little profiles for each of the product types and kind of give you the who and the why. Who is the ideal candidate for this product? Why might they look at this product? Right? So generally we see the market for hybrid long-term care around 40 to 65 on age. Um, Again, preferred funding, there's a lot of flexibility here, but we still do generally see folks with an emphasis on paying up the policy early, whether it be all at once or over a 10 pay, really being the predominant goals, generally including slicing off some of your assets to be able to protect the rest, right? Keep it very plain and simple. Folks who are kind of pre-retirement, who are on track with their goals or better, and have that room to do a single premium or a 10 pay, are generally that's kind of the financial profile that we see. Of course, women, since these are life-based products, generally receive really good value for their money. Um, and then you kind of know all these sort of main reasons for why hybrid long-term care, right? The versatility, flexible caregiving options with that cash indemnity benefit, streamlined underwriting. It can be a double-edged sword, but tends to be a good for client-facing reasons. Lots of premium flexibility, partner benefits, and inflation growth has really come a long way as well in the hybrid space, being a lot more competitively priced for business owners. One of the other innovations that we see in the hybrid long-term care market, this didn't always exist, but the separately identifiable long-term care premiums allow business owners, HSA users, whatever it may be, to deduct a portion of that overall premium that is long-term care premium. So that was always a huge advantage. That was essentially traditional long-term care only, but now we've got carriers really coming to the forefront in the hybrid space, speaking about that. If they don't have it, adding the separately identifiable long-term care premium to their product, to their illustration for that reason. So that's just another real quick overview. Now, why don't we go through some carriers? Does anybody have a particular carrier that they would like me to start with, or a specific benefit type that you'd like to compare across carriers? Otherwise, we have Hancock's
Hi,
Life Care. Yeah, hello?
it's Lynn Blue.
Hey, Lynn.
I'd be interested in what you have to say about international coverage because I know what I've known in the past, and it sounded like maybe there's been a carrier or two have come better to the plate on international coverage. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. So, um, I guess we can kind of go from best down to good in that respect. And I know I have Linda here with me too, who is an international benefit Hawkeye. She is always looking at um, international benefits. So Bright House is one of the best options that's available here as far as international benefit and what they offer. They are going to offer the full benefit internationally should you need care overseas. Obviously, pretty hard to top. And Hancock's Life Care product is also reporting full international benefit that's available overseas. Yeah, go ahead, Linda. Oh, you may be muted. Or you may not. You may need to switch your microphone. Let me see.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
That is better. Yep.
Yes. So, yes, Bright House, from the concept of international coverage, is the strongest, and the full access to all of the benefits are available internationally. However, um, it does require that you use a U.S. certified physician to approve the plan of care. And they do not have anyone at Bright House that can help the clients with this process, at least at this time. So think about it. If you have a client who is in need of two daily living skills or a cognitive impairment internationally, trying to figure out who in the United States is going to provide that plan of care, it could be complicated. And although they will tell you that you can use Zoom, yes, you can use all of these services, but the vast majority of these services, I've not found a service willing to do a plan of care via Zoom. They will do international for prescriptions. So you're abroad, you get the flu, you call, yes, no problem. They will send you a prescription via Zoom. But we have not found a physician yet. And if you find physicians, please, this is where we work as a team,
It's a never-ending quest.
right? If you find a doctor's office that's willing to do international plans of care, then great. But some of the doctors who we've spoken to said they would not risk their licenses to do international, what's considered international care when they are U.S. doctors. And many of the doctors who are international, depending on what country you're in, there may not be that many who are U.S. certified.
Right.
So Bright House could be a challenge internationally. And remember, the new product by John Hancock
Life care. Yep.
does have very good language with the ease at which you can get that coverage internationally. But remember, it is just nursing home and assisted living, and those are and assisted living is can be a US term, although they do use it in Spain, and there are other countries that they do use the term assisted living. But there are many countries that do not use the term assisted living, and it is a documented term. So if somebody's in a country that, for example, uses extended care or some other terminology, it will not be covered. At least I have no one who will say it will be covered in the claims department for John Hancock, and there is no home care. The most flexible policy out there right now is Securian. They do allow all of the policy, it's 50% internationally, so you may want to drop down to, say, a 4-year policy, bump it up a little bit so they have an 8-year policy. And yes, it does come back to the US in a full benefit. But they will help people through the process. It does not require a US physician. The medical records just have to be in English. So that is, really the most flexible and the full product. And of course, with nationwide, you have the first 3 years in a shared product and 2 years with an individual product. Keep in mind, it's only the first years, it's the acceleration of the death benefit. So for someone who's thinking, well, I'll stay in the United States until I'm running out of money and then I'll go back to my country of origin, that's not going to be helpful because they'll be using the life insurance first and the back end is not eligible for international coverage. So just a few of those thoughts.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And as far as the list from best to good, that's exactly how I would have placed them in that order. And I know we talk back and forth on international benefits quite a lot, Linda. And of course, it is an innovation to say that carriers have stepped up what they will offer, but the innovation is really lagging in the logistics in an increasingly globalized world in how we actually activate those benefits and what the contract language says about what will qualify as international benefit, be it confinement or not, be it US licensed physician, be it how you get evaluated for that plan of care. There are still a lot of steps that need to be taken. The first step is saying, hey, we offer a very robust international benefit. But I think only with time are we going to get to a point where those benefits feel as easy to claim on as they would if you were living in the continental United States and needed care.
Exactly. And you have to remember, never forget, we sell promises of insurance companies, and we need to make sure those promises are going to be kept. So if someone asks you for international coverage, you really want to make sure that when those people go in to claim internationally, that those benefits are going to be able to be retrieved. And remember, for all policies, you do need a US bank.
Yes. And um, where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. I know there's still a lot to kind of talk about as far as what's still missing, what's still needed in international benefits, who's doing well in what areas and not. One of these days we will have a study group on international benefits, but I think there's a lot of drawing board to go before we actually speak that out. And Linda, if I could borrow you for just another minute, I know you have kind of been a forerunner in looking at analyzing the John Hancock Life Care product, and I think you've taken to it a bit because it is a bit differentiated from other options that are out there in the market. Now we have products that have some market involvement out there, like Lincoln's Variable Advantage product, their Market Advantage product, the variable product. But Hancock is kind of in the middle of a fixed and a variable with an indexed hybrid plan. And it offers some different value props, I would say, than the just same old hybrid plans that we see. What have you kind of noticed from your initial digging in to that life care product?
So the exciting part of this product is that this is, a in your toolbox. It's another tool in your toolbox. And I think it's a good idea to throw it out there when you're showing those other products, especially for people who talk about self-insuring. Because what it does is it has a death benefit that grows. It's not just a return of premium, it's an indexed. And so for people who believe that they can do as well in the stock market as an insurance policy, this is a great product for that population because you have a death benefit that's growing faster than the market, and the benefit is going to be received tax free. And if somebody thinks they're making 7% in the market, then they're feeling, or 20% in the market, then they're going to be, very comfortable with even a 5%, anticipated return. If we're going to be conservative in this product with the long-term care benefit. Keep in mind, this product works best with a 4-year benefit and a single premium. So if you play around with the numbers, you'll see that the real big bang is with single premium 4-year benefit. And then it looks really good. So, this is a great thing for a 1035 exchange. So somebody has a life insurance policy, they have $100,000 in their life insurance policy. There's no death benefit. I mean, there's no long-term care benefit. You throw it in this policy, and basically, it relatively quickly they will have a similar death benefit, and all that death benefit will be accessible to long-term care. So, so it's a nice product to have in your toolbox.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Does anybody else have any experience working with the Hancock Life Care product that would like to share what they've seen? Has anybody quoted it, or have they been asked about it? I think there's some really good things to like about this product. So if there are others that are using it or at least comparing it or have at least done that initial research, I would love to hear from you.
Um, Hi Jason, this is Elena.
Hey.
I did quote it a couple times, and I think the big differentiator in the conversation for me, because I love asset-based products, that was my focus for 5 years and I was over at AIN. But I think the big differentiator is that one, it's performance products. So I kind of look at the other index type products that are out there, or Mass Mutual that has one that's a whole life participating, and they show this large pool of value on the death benefit and the cash value. Those trade-offs to me, at the end of the day, for me, are they worth it? Because you're looking at the performance number, but when you shift back to the guarantee numbers, how well do they really fare out against a true, Nationwide or MoneyGuard or Security and Guaranteed product? So that's kind of where my brain goes. I always want to compare the guarantees versus the performance, but I think there's time and the right demographic for those plans. Maybe I don't know, maybe it's a younger demographic. I'd be open to see what everyone else is kind of quoting out there when it comes to the performance products and to whom.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue of brand new product is we'll need some time for people to work through all the cases that they're confronted with that they believe will be a good fit, that quote it out, that compare it to other carriers, right? Um, we did get a question about is the Hancock product indemnity or reimbursement? There is a choice there, actually, whether to use indemnity or reimbursement. I have a strong suspicion that most clients will actually go indemnity, but there is a choice that's available to you there. So, a couple more things about the Hancock product. Um, Not available in California, Connecticut, Delaware, Guam, Indiana, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, South Carolina for right now. So it's like 8 states and 2 territories that it's not available in. Otherwise, pretty wide availability. The increasing death benefit can be very, very attractive. Remember, you are also selling a life product with long-term care. So there are some clients who will find quite a bit of value in that. Um, the Vitality program is a really interesting sort of play there as well. You're seeing a lot of wellness programs that are being strapped on to annuity products or short-term care products, whatever they may be. Hancock's Vitality was probably the first in the US, and they have a lot of data from that wellness program now. So the fact that they continue to offer it means something is going pretty well there, and people are engaging with that program. Um, so that is definitely an interesting play too. Talked about the indemnity and reimbursement choice. You can look at a single 5, 10, or 15 pay. Um, no age cap on that 15 pay either. 2, 4, 6 year benefit period that's done by a 2 plus 0, 2 plus 2, or 3 plus 3. You can look at an indexed, fixed, or 5% inflation growth. It is 7702B long-term care. There are separately identifiable long-term care premiums. Minimum funding is, or it looks like minimum face amount 50K, max 500K. They've got a number of different health classes. So they've got preferred non-tobacco, standard non-tobacco, select non-tobacco, and then just a plain standard tobacco. When I asked him from an underwriting perspective, where do they think they're strong? Diabetes and cancer survivors, it just generally is what I was provided with. Um, they don't ask about any marijuana use as part of their application, so I know that can be a sweet spot for some. Elimination periods done 90 calendar days. Domestic partners of at least 12 months can qualify for partner discounts, same generation family members as well. And their benefit lock is pretty interesting. So once there's a credit on the death benefit, that's locked in. Again, very strong on death benefit, very strong on shorter claims, gearing more toward a 4 year benefit period than a 6. We see most carriers kind of default to 6 as our sweet spot and leave it at that. So it's kind of cool to see a carrier coming out with a pricing strength and other cells. Benefits do stop growing at 85 under this plan, so that is something to keep in mind. Um, that 100% international benefit for nursing home and assisted living is an interesting piece with virtual consultation available there. Anything I missed on life care? I knew we would cover a lot of this because it's the newest product to the market. But I will also move on and cover another few updates that we have outside of Securian in California. I'm going to give you a little bit of a lowdown on Asset Care 2024 for those of you who maybe haven't heard, or maybe it just recently came to your state and you want to learn a little bit more about it. So, Asset Care 2024 is how One America products are going to operate in those states. So, it's a little bit different than how old Asset Care used to operate, but it's still the same One America product you know and love with some enhancements. So, the acceleration of benefits on asset care is always going to be a 2 year acceleration of benefits. But your COB choices are now 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and still that lifetime continuation of benefits rider that everybody knows and loves. There are some high level kind of administrative changes that are really, really positive out of Asset Care 2024 as well. So independent providers are now available for reimbursement. So it's a billing system change that is designed to assist independent providers who don't belong to kind of a wider organization. So if you have an independent, as it says on the graphic here, CNA, home health aide, CMA, all the way down the line, RNs, vocational nurses, if they are kind of an independent entity, their billing system can now help support that. So I thought that was a really cool thing to kind of pinpoint and change and be vocal about on One America's part. There is a new cash benefit, so that acceleration of benefits rider can be used to meet informal care needs, but you'll receive 75% of the monthly benefit limit, and that is for the acceleration of benefits rider only. I think if there is one chief knock on One America as a product, their acceleration of benefits tends to be that base policy tends to be a bit underwhelming just because generally it is bought and sold without inflation protection. if you try to put inflation protection on it, it can kind of put things underwater as far as cost. So at least seeing that there is now some flexibility with the AOB gives you something to like about it. And then their caregiver consultant program, which is provided and paid for by One America, is essentially if you have an informal caregiver, kind of hand in hand with this cash benefit AOB, you can kind of have a consultant or coach for that caregiver to really teach them how to do a more efficient job. So you can do in-person consultations once a month, or virtual, completely optional. But I think this is really cool because it's one thing to be able to accommodate informal caregiving. It's another thing entirely to kind of help somebody who has been thrust into that position to do the best job that they possibly can. And then expanded supportive equipment benefit, automated medication dispensers, medical monitoring systems, and human lifts are now kind of going to fall under that supportive equipment benefit. And there is some pricing changes. Again, a theme I touched on in the very beginning of the call is that price decrease. So these are very general. You'll have to quote things out to get an idea of your specific cases. But all COB policies electing full inflation protection have seen some price decreases. 12% average decrease for policies with inflation protection and about 4% for those without. So it doesn't just apply to these plans, but we're seeing significant decreases for COB policies electing full inflation. Um, any policies with any inflation protection, we're seeing about a 12% average decrease, 4% without, and some new inflation protection amounts. So new option of 2.2% compound for life and for 20 years. If 3% is a little steep for you, a 2% compound is nice. And I really like the addition of anything that allows you to tinker with the inflation protection, to still have access to it, but to keep things affordable as well and have long-term care actually fit the budget rather than be unrealistic. So as of October 21st, these are the states that have Asset Care 2024 right now. But I have made an update because as of last week, they added Arizona, California, Florida, Indiana, and New Jersey to that list of Asset Care 2024 states. So everything you see up here, previously not available in these 5 states, and they have just been added. Okay, so I would say, this is a pretty large change to a product that's been around a long time. I guess you could call this a new product generation. It's not a full out brand new product, but it's about as close as you can get. So really good to see this coming out of One America. Again, I thought the Securian in California was great to see. We love more carriers available out here in California, which can kind of be the tundra at times. And speaking of insurance product availability, Tundra, New York. Now, if you do any amount of business in New York and you're not aware of Bright House Financial, you need to get aware of Bright House Financial. One of the top products that are available in New York for hybrid long-term care. In my opinion, not much competition, but that aside, lots to like about this product. Do I have Diane on here? Diane, you're the only one I know who loves Bright House. If you're available, would you just give us a few notes on what you like about Bright House, and we can talk about some of the changes they've made just very recently?
Well, some of the stuff I like in New York, I like them because there's inflation growth on the life insurance part.
Right,
So it beats nationwide hands down because if you buy a $6,000 a month nationwide with inflation, the inflation doesn't start until year three. And
right,
Bright House costs more because it promises more money, but it promises more money.
right. And we talked about the international benefit, but they've also come out with some new features recently that I know you've been asking quite a long time for. So they're another carrier that has that sort of index benefit growth, but they've also recently added a 3% compound inflation protection option. I don't know how much you've quoted it. Do you have any experience quoting it? Obviously, it's not available in New York, so this would be for states outside New York. Have you run into it much yet? Do you
Right.
have any
And
thoughts?
I just ran some today. I can find them.
Timing is so great on this.
Give me a sec. I gotta find where I
Yeah, yeah,
published.
no problem. I'll keep flapping my gums here. Um, and it was highly asked for Bright House to provide a 10 pay because I believe the max they were offering before was a 5 pay. So really limited on who could really get a Bright House plan, given that they only had like a single through 5 pay. But that 10 pay provides a bit more flexibility and may fit a few more budgets than previously. Um, from an underwriting process, when I talk about built for speed with other carriers, Bright House is very, very built for speed. No paper, no face-to-face requirements, no underwriting vendors. And for clients under 65, underwriting offers have the potential to be given out in a matter of a few days. Um, but even given that, they're kind of cheating my system that I set up, right? So I talked about two sides of the coin. Quick process and on the other side of the coin, being able to give more benefit of the doubt. Well, Bright House goes up to table 8 for mortality risk. So they're actually able to have a little bit of a quick process and take a few more risks on underwriting because they have that flexibility to go up to higher tables. Um, Very friendly towards cortisone shots as long as there is not any sort of ADL residuals from those injections. That's something they're friendly to. There's a few other conditions that I know them to be very, very friendly to as well. Um, so there's a lot to like here. Ages 40 to 75, not available in California. Don't remind me. 90 calendar days, cash indemnity benefit, and a guaranteed ROP of 75% of premiums paid. Um, Anything
Right.
else that I've missed?
One of the things with Bright House is it's an indexed life insurance. So
Yep,
the cost of the life insurance is less than the whole life that you see on the other hybrids because they have to guarantee different things. So even though the long-term care might cost a little bit more on Bright House, the death benefit costs a little bit less and it balances out.
right. Yep, 100%. And a couple other underwriting notes. I had certain cardiac conditions, anxiety, depression is one thing they've mentioned several times in a relatively liberal build chart. There are a few carriers
Mhm.
that generally do. Couples discount is really a range, so 5 to 30% based on the age and gender of the client. And the client spouse doesn't need to apply for that spousal discount to be in effect.
Right.
So
And I got someone approved with bipolar with them. That was the only company that would consider him.
yeah, I've heard a couple of Bright House success stories where um, there weren't any other hybrid carriers that I could really go to based on the client situation, and Bright House took them. So I would definitely get in touch with we have Matt McCormick at Bright House. He does a great job and generally does the relay between underwriting and the like. Um, were you able to find anything on the 3% pricing, Diane?
Actually, that's what I was running today was the 3%. And it came out significantly. I did 4,000 and 6,000 a month with 3% on 4 years. And it came out a lower cost than the nationwide. And then the lady was 72, so I could only do the 7 year Securian. I couldn't do the 10 year.
Mm,
But it came out about the same cost as the 7 year Securian. So it's just a matter now of preference for the client.
yeah,
But
and
it plays well.
I would say one thing about Bright House is they are not afraid to price pretty darn aggressively in specific states where they want to go after the business. They will go after the business and they'll go after it on price. So definitely one carrier you just want to keep in your back pocket for sure. Um, I haven't heard much new on the nationwide front, so I don't have tons to cover with nationwide today, but I can assure you, Alan Gregoire assured you a few weeks ago that there is stuff on the horizon there, rumblings about an annuity-based long-term care product, but potentially farther out into the future, a Care Matters 3 that we could be looking at. So I think they're keeping some things under wraps because they have a lot to announce in the not so distant future. Um, does anybody else have any sort of specific product that they would like me to cover or some specific way they're placing hybrid long-term care? Anything you've picked up or heard in the news recently that I didn't cover as far as really recent updates go, to be able to share? Anybody want to add anything to the study hall before we start to wrap it just a little bit?
Jason, can I just jump back a question for Linda? Probably Linda, but regarding the John Hancock Life Care, I was just sitting here, and it's not available in New Jersey where most of my business is, but I was just sitting here playing around with it. So I picked Tennessee because it came up as an option. And it doesn't look like on a four, and maybe it's specific to Tennessee, but it doesn't look like on a 4-year benefit period that you can have inflation of 5%. You have to have a 6-year benefit period, but we just said the sweet pot was a 4-year benefit period. So what is it that I'm missing that I don't understand? So you don't take, you just,
I think
well,
5% inflation is generally just not a sweet spot of the product in
no, it's
They,
not
general.
they
even
they're not offering the
available.
5% on the 4 year. They said on the meeting we had a few weeks ago that the 5% is only available on the 6 year.
Yeah, it's only available on the 6-year benefit period. So in other
So
words,
four
like,
years in the index is generally
okay.
what they're
And
pushing.
so you're relying on S&P or whatever one I see the options are just like most of their IULs. It's Barclays core, base, or fixed accounts. So you're basically relying on out of the S&P 500 and subject to caps for your inflation protection on your benefit.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Probably
Yep.
doesn't work in my marketplace, but that's because I'm not working with 40-year-olds for this kind of coverage.
Yeah, I mean it's still great protection. I think it can work even if you're talking to like centers of influence who are financial advisors, they may gravitate toward that product. I think you'll always kind of have a listening ear in that community. And I think it's all at the end of the day down to, is this going to fit my budget and provide me the protection I'm looking for? Like Linda said, it's a tool in your toolbox. Um, but yeah, I'm interested to hear a little bit more as people start to work with the product more and more. Anybody else have any other items that they want to go through with regard to hybrid long-term care? Anything you're noticing? Anything you want to ask?
I have
Alrighty.
a question about claims.
What's that?
This is Sandra.
Hi,
Can I ask a
Sandra.
question about claims?
Of course.
Okay. Well, I was reading an article that the hybrid policies wasn't paying like the policy said. And so a lot of people were being taken to court because it's based on what the company said, based on, I guess, how long a person could live. So they wasn't really paying out the long-term care claims. Have y'all read that?
Hmm. I have not read that, but
Yeah.
Hey,
does,
this is Ramona Neal.
hey,
So
Ramona.
what she's speaking to, and it gets to what Jason talked about at the beginning when he said, there are 100 names for these solutions. So when we say hybrid, we mean the products with the extension of benefit, like Care Matters and MoneyGuard. All of those are always paying out. Care Matters, MoneyGuard, Bright House, John, they all will pay out. What Sandra is talking about are certain types of chronic illness riders,
Mm,
the kind that are free, there's no upfront charge. And then exactly as Sandra described, when the person goes to make a claim, the amount that's eligible for acceleration depends on a lot of
right.
factors. Interest rate, age, gender. But the most important, the cash value, the type of policy, the premium that had been paid, but the most important factor that matters is how close you are to death. And the
Hmm.
closer you are to death, the more you can accelerate. But for example, if you were 30 years old and you were in an accident, now you're in a wheelchair, that's pretty young, right? You
Hmm.
could go to accelerate and be told that the amount eligible for acceleration is $0.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, so basically, those plans aren't as good as just the true hybrid plans with the long-term care rider. That's what we want to.
So the true hybrid plans is one solution. Then you
Mhm.
have some chronic illness riders that you pay for that allow you to accelerate the entire death benefit. And you also have long-term care riders. I would say an easy way to segregate them or to kind of know, because I consider all of them to be good, but that would be another call. Um, if you're paying an upfront charge for the long-term care benefit, you're good to go because then you have a known and predictable benefit. So if there's an upfront charge for it, you're good to go. If something is free, like certain chronic illness riders, quite frankly, most of them in the market, if something is free and there's no upfront charge, then you got to keep your fingers crossed on the back end.
That
But
makes
100%.
a lot of times, the only reason you use them to be part of your long-term care basket is because you don't have the ability to actually buy a long-term care product.
That's a very good point. So you could literally be declined from any other solution, but these may be the free ones may be automatically available up to a certain table rating like D or E.
Yep.
So
right.
yeah, that might be another call. And Jason, if you or
Right.
Mark would want me to do one, I'd be happy to do one.
I would be overjoyed to have somebody of your stature lead a study group
Oh,
session.
thank
So,
you. Thank
so
you.
yes, let's talk. And if you guys don't know Ramona, just one of the geniuses of product information, especially when it comes to the general blanket term of hybrid long-term care plans. And if you'd like to leave a link to anything you have, Ramona, feel free to share because I think what you do is
Mhm.
excellent, excellent work. And I was happy to see your name come in to the waiting room today.
Wonderful.
Is-
And Jason, I sent you an email before you complimented me. I just want you to know that up front.
Okay, all right. Let's do it. That
So,
would be a really,
Jason,
really good session. Yeah, go ahead,
it's
Diane.
Diane. Hey, another thing there, and I might step on some toes here, but one of the things that we have to educate our clients on is to know and to ask questions to the people that are offering these chronic illness riders, because it may be that that person isn't licensed to sell true long-term care,
Yes.
and they're not going to tell the client that they're just going to sell a product. So just educate your clients.
Yes, super, super good point. One other thing, Sandra, with regard to true long-term care versus chronic illness riders, the contract language matters a lot. So, what actually constitutes a claim there? Not even talking about kind of the free chronic illness riders, but real 101G chronic illness riders as we know them. It's about, is your condition expected to last 90 days or more? Which is what true long-term care would really be looking to certify. And 101G riders may require permanency of the condition that you're dealing with, truly chronic illness, in order to qualify for benefits. And again, as Lynn said, it kind of runs the spectrum of, as the terms may get less and less favorable to you as far as what it takes to qualify for a claim, that may signal to a client that has difficulties getting one product or another that it may be an easier product to get into, but the contract language just matters so much in long-term care. And I know many of us on this call will bury our noses in contract language quite a bit when it comes to we need the 100% answer if we're going to bring the option to a client. So thank you, Ramona, Diane, Lynn, everybody stepping in on that one, and just everybody for adding your conversation to the call. Really appreciate it. I hope you learned at least one thing you could take away, or even if you know it all, which some of you do, I'm going to be quite honest. Hopefully, I refreshed your memory on at least one thing, or somebody else on the call refreshed your memory on at least one thing. That's always the goal. I appreciate you being here, and have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you this time next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.